Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. In today's video, I'm going to do the full review of the upcoming Zero Tolerance 0392, which is a collaboration with knife maker Rick Hinderer based on his model, the Eklipse. So, a lot to cover in this video. We'll do the normal format, which are specs, overall impressions, we'll get into the specifics, and then I also have a Rick Hinderer Eklipse here on loan from my friend Justin. So thanks so much, Justin, for letting me borrow that for the review. I will put his Instagram link in the description box below. He takes great pictures on Instagram. So anyhow, this is what the knife ships with. You have a kind of a rather large display box here, or nice little packaging. It does say factory custom, as that is what they're calling this particular collaboration with Rick Hinderer, and I will get into that a little bit later because it's a really interesting topic. But limited edition ZT box, magnetic closure. Inside we open it up and find a certificate of authenticity with one of the head honchos at Kai, and then Rick Hinderer's signature, and then the model number and so forth. But it goes into a little bit of the specifics. Really nice display or presentation on this limited edition. And then down below you've got like an instructions booklet or something. I didn't even bother to look at it. Although I'm sure it's well put together and someone strived hard for that. But let's get that out of the way. All right, so just basics. This is a titanium frame lock flipper, stainless steel lock insert, awesome hardware. It's a ZT, so you know the quality's there. But let's get into the specs real quick. So blade length 3.5 inches, handle length is 4.7 inches, giving us an overall of 8.2 inches, and this weighs in at 5.8 ounces. So honestly, it's fairly light for a full tie flipper that's this robust. So that was a nice surprise. Now the thickness in the pocket is going to be about 0.533 inches. And then the width at the widest portion, which is here, is going to be about 1.488 inches wide. So now all the blue hardware on here, as you can see, the body screws, the filler tabs, pivot screw that was, and the pocket clip. This is all titanium. Everything else is stonewashed titanium, so this is an anodized blue. And the interesting thing is that Rick Hinderer actually produced all of this and then shipped it over to Kershaw or Kai or ZT, whichever company you want to designate, and they installed them on the knives and assembled. So anyhow, that's pretty much it for the specs. Ooh, real quickly. This is produced in CTS 204P. The initial prototypes were done in M390, but it seems that the US companies are having trouble getting their hands on M390 these days, which is likely the reason that those of you looking for the 0562 carbon fiber in M390 are not really seeing them out and about in large numbers. And I have no problem if they switch up completely to 204P if it is a better pipeline for this steel that's very comparable to M390. All right, so that was a little much for the specs, but overall impressions, honestly, it's a zero tolerance, and I think that really speaks for itself in terms of the quality, in terms of what you can expect as far as the materials and construction. And so quality's there. It's an excellent knife. It's really well built. I mean, all the things that we've come to know and love, and especially with the limited editions. I've had the 777 in M390. I have the 801 carbon fiber brown wash, and then I've also had the ZT600, and they've all just been very consistent. Now, assuming you are in that 0.001% that might have a problem with your knife, Kai's customer service is excellent, and I have no doubt they'll take care of you. So anyhow, now, one other confession. I'm not a Hinderer fan per se. Not that I dislike his designs, but Hinderer knives in general have never really drawn to me, and I've kind of skipped over those for some reason. But I am a full-fledged ZT fan, and that is the reason that I picked up this knife, which hopefully is good news for Zero Tolerance, because I'm sure there are other people in that boat, and it's not necessarily Rick Hinderer's name that's bringing people to the table anymore. But for me, it's just the expectations and the delivery of what I've come to know and expect in terms of quality, sharpness, and performance from these Zero Tolerance knives. But anyways, yeah, so those are my overall impressions. I'm sure many of you know you can't go wrong with this knife. And my only little gripe is probably the sharp edges on the corners of the flipper tab. Other than that, it is absolutely perfect. So, all right, let's get into the specifics. So as I mentioned, CTS 204P, very comparable to M390. It's a super steel, really good performance, edge retention, corrosion resistance, and so forth. It's just an excellent steel, and it's what you would hope they would use on something like a limited edition. So anyhow, it's been given what I believe what's called a working finish that Rick Hinderer uses. So some type of really heavy-duty stonewash. But this knife is really, with a finish like that on the blade, this knife is just meant to be used. So ZT marking on this side. Over here we have the usual kind of, markings from Kai and Kershaw and ZT. 0392, Hinderer design, Kai USA, steel choice, and the serial number. So the, grinds are excellent. Symmetry looks pretty good. It looks perfect on this one. And this came with a tremendously sharp edge. I was very impressed. I've gotten some others in recently that were quite a disappointment. So this is a shaving sharp edge without question. Now you do have these blade stops here on the blade, and they are not thumb studs. I've gotten it to open once using these, but my thumb ended up way too close to the edge of the blade. So if you try to do it, you might end up cutting yourself, as I almost did. So this is going to be first and foremost a flipper, and these are blade stops, and they nestle into the tie up here. So flipping action is excellent. Now again, as I mentioned, you do have some sharp edges up here on the corners. So if you kind of get in there a little crooked, as I typically tend to flip, it does hurt a little bit. Now my fingers have actually calloused over on the tips here from flipping knives so much, which is great because this isn't too much of an irritant, but this finger has a hard time, my smartphone has a hard time recognizing touches now because of the calloused fingers. So I'm sure those of you knife or flipping fanatics can know what I'm talking about. But anyways, as long as you get straight on the top, it's not sharp. Flipping action is excellent. I can flip with my thumb, pretty much every finger on my hand. So flipping action is excellent. KVT is exceptional. Again, as far as a stainless steel ball bearing system goes, this thing is as smooth as a lot of these ceramics that I've had my hands on. And I don't know how they're able to do it or how they're able to do it so consistently, but that is certainly something to be in awe of in regards to ZT. All right, so the other thing that's kind of weird on this knife is the fact that the jimping is on the back side of the flipper, which you don't ever touch. You can't flip it from the back here. You have to be on the front of the knife. And so this doesn't do push down, this only does light switch. And I know that they were staying true to the Eklipse design, and that's something that's also found on the Eklipse, but it just doesn't really make any sense why it's there. Maybe some of you who are diehard Hinderer fans know of a reason, but I don't understand the purpose of that. So again, I don't have all the answers to all things Hinderer. I am not a Hinderer fanatic, or I don't really follow it much. You do have jimping up top, fairly sharp. It locks the thumb in really well. I do like the jimping on top. All right, let's get to the main body of the knife. Again, you do have that working finish here on the tie. It's a really, it's a really, really dark kind of stonewash finish. Just really made to be used and abused if necessary without showing too much, without really showing much. Like there's a scuff that kind of came scuffed on this thing as part of the finish, I guess, but doesn't detract at all from the design. So this is one you can carry without having to worry about marring up the finish. Now, one of the standout features is certainly all of the titanium hardware that has been supplied by Rick Hinderer to ZT for this knife. So this one has been given a nice blue. As far as the pocket clip, the filler tabs, the body screws, the pivot screw, just really nice, beautiful contrast to that dark working finish. So, and as a side note, I believe that this series, this kind of custom factory series with with Rick Hinderer is supposed to be kind of one of many, essentially. So we might be seeing another knife come out maybe soon after this one that possibly has a different blade shape, and they should be compatible, at least the ZTs with the ZTs, and then the hardware should be compatible with any of the Eklipse hardware. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm still a little bit in the dark about that, but this is all the Eklipse hardware as far as I'm aware. Now, let's talk about the, pocket clip. Again, this is all what you've come to know and love, those of you who've had Hinderers before, so it doesn't carry deep necessarily, but it carries deep enough to where it's not poking out too much, but these two screws are an excellent traction point to extract. Ergonomically in the hand, it has kind of a long, slender profile. You've got these two finger grooves here, so it locks in very well. And the fact that it kind of tapers thin at the back, it's very comfortable. This is, again, going to be a great user from a jimping, an ergonomic, a blade steel, and a handle finish standpoint. Just a user. So let's take a look at how smooth the KVT is. Yeah, it'll drop closed on itself. The camera angle is making it a little difficult to convey, but anyways. So again, excellent build, excellent quality. Again, my only gripe was just the corner edges of the flipper tab. Other than that, it is absolute perfection. Now let's talk about the factory custom aspect. So factory custom, what they mean by that is any of the hardware all the hardware supplied by Rick Hinderer, and they just take it and assemble their knives with it. And from a manufacturing standpoint, that is certainly an accomplishment. I mean, there are knife companies out there that make every aspect of the knife in the same factory, and there are problems with the knife, in terms of tolerances and fitting it together correctly and working well. But what they've done is they've taken parts that someone else machined, maybe on different machines, maybe with different programs, and they stuck it into their knife. So the tolerances from both companies and the fact that they were able to do that is certainly something to be applauded. And I think as end users, that's not something that we quite understand the difficulty or complexity of. But again, I think both companies should certainly receive a standing ovation for the willingness and the ability to accomplish that task. Now, looking at it from a consumer standpoint, it's kind of cool, but honestly, I don't really care if Rick Hinderer produces the titanium hardware on here. If ZT had produced it, it would have been all the same to me. It wouldn't have mattered, to be honest. So again, from a consumer standpoint or an end user standpoint, it's kind of cool, but if ZT had done it, it wouldn't have made really any difference to me. Now, the fact that this hardware is interchangeable with other Eklipse hardware is something that is potentially really cool depending on how it works out. So in theory, I should be able to go over to the Hinderer website and get maybe all my screws in orange, or brass, or get different standoffs, and pick up any of the Eklipse hardware from Rick Hinderer's website and install it on my knife and create something that's that's cool, that's different, that's unique. Now, in terms of whether that's going to work or not is going to depend on, one, are the parts available, which right now almost everything is sold out on the website, and two, am I going to have to go to the secondary market and pay a premium to get the hardware that I want for my knife? And that's yet to be determined. I did go to the Hinderer website and poke around a bit, and I had trouble really deciphering what worked with what. For instance, under the pivot screws page, it said Eklipse owners, the 3.5/XM24 version will work on your knife. For the handle screws, it says the 3-inch XM18 has a specific set of screws, and the XM18 3.5 and XM24 use the same screws. So again, I'm potentially what you would call a savvy knife consumer, but since I'm not a diehard Rick Hinderer fan, the website is a bit difficult for me to navigate. So we can kind of extrapolate that to say that a lot of people are going to have confusion if they don't really spell it out black and white as to, will this work on my 0392? And again, the availability of those parts is going to play a huge factor in how cool that is or how much people are able to utilize it. So hopefully that gets kind of gets resolved or is addressed at some point closer to the release, so that it'll be seamless and easy and everyone can be happy with the fact that the factory custom means something from an end user standpoint. So hopefully that made sense. Now, let's get into the difference with the Rick Hinderer Eklipse. So this is a kind of one of the baseline Eklipses. I did have the opportunity to handle a full custom, which was another friend of mine, and honestly the full custom was full tie and it flipped really well. So I feel like the ZT0392 is actually much more comparable to the Eklipse Custom than it is to the base Eklipse. But here are some differences. This one came out with a Tonto version versus this beautiful drop point with the swedge. I honestly prefer this blade shape, and I failed to give that more attention when we went over the blade. But G10 side full tie. This came with kind of the basic hardware. I don't know if it's tie or stainless. I think it's all tie, but again, someone else, Hinderer fan, would know better. But spec-wise, as far as length and everything, they look exactly the same. Now I did talk to Kai and I did talk to Hinderer about what parts were compatible. Kai had no idea, but when I emailed Hinderer, Rob Orlando responded in seriously 2 minutes with a definite answer, so kudos to them for a quick customer service. But the blades will not be switchable, but the hardware will. So, you know, standoffs, pocket clip, filler tabs, so on and so forth, and pivot screws. Now, this one does have KVT, and it has a stainless steel lock insert, both pluses. This one has just a titanium lock bar, no insert, and it does use Teflon washers, so it's definitely not as smooth, and it doesn't flip as well. If you do the push down, you can get it, but light switch, you know, typical Hinderer knives, although the custom Eklipse was very comparable to this one in terms of like a really good D10 and flipping action. Now this one does have real usable thumb studs, whereas the 0392 has blade stops that do not work well, and I would not recommend you cut yourself trying. All right, so camera's gonna cut me off pretty quick here, but that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, take care. Hopefully I've conveyed everything.